Wife said I married you but I never got over him during therapy, so I filed for divorce that week, and now she's shocked he wants nothing to do with her affair baby. I'm a 34-year-old engineer living in Northern Virginia, and I need to get this story off my chest because I honestly can't believe how my life has changed in the past 6 months. My wife Sarah and I have been married for 5 years, and up until recently, I thought we had a pretty solid relationship. We both have good careers, we live in a nice house in the suburbs, and we've been talking about starting a family. But sometimes life hits you with a truth bomb that changes everything, and that's exactly what happened to me during what was supposed to be a routine marriage counseling session. Let me start from the beginning. Sarah and I met through mutual friends at a barbecue about 7 years ago. She was funny, smart, beautiful, and we hit it off immediately. We dated for 2 years before I proposed, and our wedding was everything we both wanted. For the first few years of marriage, everything seemed perfect. We traveled together, bought our house, advanced in our careers, and talked about our future kids. But about 8 months ago, I started noticing that Sarah seemed distant. She was on her phone more than usual, she seemed distracted during conversations, and our physical relationship had cooled significantly. When I tried to talk to her about it, she would brush off my concerns and say she was just stressed about work. I believed her at first, but the distance kept growing. After months of feeling like I was living with a roommate instead of a wife, I suggested marriage counseling. Sarah resisted at first, saying we didn't need outside help, but I insisted. I told her that either we figured out what was wrong or our marriage was heading toward serious trouble. She finally agreed, and we found a therapist named Dr. Martinez who specialized in couples counseling. Our first few sessions were pretty standard. We talked about communication issues, work stress, and how to reconnect as a couple. Dr. Martinez had us do exercises about expressing our feelings and really listening to each other. I thought we were making progress, even though Sarah seemed reluctant to fully engage in the process. But then came our fourth session, the one that changed everything. Dr. Martinez was asking us about our relationship history, specifically about past relationships and how they might be affecting our current marriage. She asked Sarah to talk about her most significant relationship before me. Sarah got quiet and started fidgeting with her wedding ring. She told the therapist about her college boyfriend, Marcus. They had dated for 3 years during college and broke up when he moved across the country for a job opportunity. Sarah described it as her first real love, the relationship that taught her what it meant to be truly connected to someone. Dr. Martinez asked Sarah how that relationship ending had affected her, and that's when Sarah dropped the bomb that destroyed my world. I think about him every day, Sarah said, not looking at me. I married David because he's stable and kind and would be a good father, but I never got over Marcus. I thought I could love David the way I loved Marcus, but I can't. It's not the same. The room went completely silent. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach and all the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I stared at Sarah, waiting for her to take it back, to say she misspoke, but she just sat there with tears in her eyes. So you're saying you settled for me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm saying I love you, but not the way I should, she replied. Not the way you deserve to be loved. Dr. Martinez tried to intervene, talking about how honesty was the first step toward healing, but I wasn't hearing any of it. My wife had just told me, in front of a stranger, that our entire marriage was built on a lie. That she had been thinking about another man every single day for 5 years while I believed we were building a life together. I stood up and walked out of that office without saying another word. Sarah called after me, but I kept walking. I got in my car and drove around for 3 hours, trying to process what had just happened. When I finally went home, Sarah was waiting for me in the living room. She tried to explain herself, saying that the therapist had encouraged complete honesty and that admitting the truth was supposed to help us work through our problems. She said she did love me, just differently, and that maybe we could figure out how to build something real from there. I told her there was nothing to figure out. I said that if she had been thinking about another man every day of our marriage, then she had been emotionally cheating on me for 5 years. I said that I deserved to be with someone who chose me first, not someone who settled for me because I was safe. Sarah broke down crying and begged me not to make any rash decisions. She said the therapy was working, that being honest about her feelings was the first step toward truly committing to our marriage. But I was done. I told her I would be staying in our guest room until I could figure out my next steps. That weekend, I called my brother and told him everything. He was furious on my behalf and offered to let me stay at his place while I figured things out. I also called a divorce attorney and scheduled a consultation for the following Monday. When I told Sarah I was filing for divorce, she was shocked. She said she thought we were going to work through this together, that her honesty in therapy meant we could finally build a real relationship. I told her that her honesty had revealed that we never had a real relationship to begin with. The divorce process was surprisingly straightforward since we didn't have kids and had kept most of our finances separate. Virginia is a no-fault divorce state, so I didn't have to prove anything beyond irreconcilable differences. Sarah tried to drag it out, insisting we needed more counseling, but I was firm in my decision. About 2 months into the separation, while we were still living in the same house but in separate bedrooms, Sarah started acting differently. She was happier, more energetic, and spent a lot of time on her phone smiling. I figured she was probably dating someone, which was fine with me since we were getting divorced anyway. But then one evening, She knocked on the guest room door and asked if we could talk. She had this strange look on her face, like she was excited about something. She sat on the edge of the bed and told me she had some news. "I've been in contact with Marcus," she said, barely able to contain her smile. I wasn't surprised. In fact, I had been expecting this ever since her therapy confession. "Okay," I said. "What does that have to do with me?" "We've been talking for a few weeks, and he's going to visit next month. David, I think this is a sign. I think admitting my feelings in therapy was supposed to lead me back to him." I stared at her in disbelief. "Sarah, we're getting divorced. You can talk to whoever you want." "But that's just it," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "What if we don't have to get divorced? What if I was supposed to explore these feelings so I could realize that what I really want is the life we've been building together?" I had no idea what she was talking about. "You literally told me you think about another man every day and that you settled for me. How does talking to that man make you want to stay married to me?" Sarah launched into this bizarre explanation about how she needed to see Marcus again to get closure, to realize that what they had was in the past and that her future was with me. She said that maybe her feelings for him had been keeping her from fully committing to our marriage, and seeing him again would finally free her to love me the way I deserved. I told her that was the most backward logic I'd ever heard, and that our divorce was proceeding as planned. She seemed confused by my response, like she genuinely thought I would be happy about her plan to use another man to figure out if she wanted to stay married to me. Marcus visited 3 weeks later. Sarah took a few days off work, and I stayed at my brother's place to give them space to have whatever reunion they needed to have. I honestly didn't care what happened between them because my marriage was already over in my mind. But when I came back to get some of my things, Sarah was a wreck. She was crying, hadn't showered, and looked like she hadn't slept in days. When I asked what happened, she broke down completely. "He's married," she sobbed. "Marcus has been married for 2 years. He has a 1-year-old daughter, and he's happy. He only came here because he felt bad about how things ended in college, and he wanted to apologize for not staying in touch." Apparently, Marcus had spent their reunion visit talking about his wife and daughter, showing Sarah pictures, and explaining how much his life had changed since college. He told Sarah that while he had cared about her deeply back then, he had moved on completely and was confused about why she had contacted him after all these years. Sarah said she had built up this fantasy in her head that Marcus had been pining for her the way she had been pining for him. She thought that when they saw each other again, they would realize they were meant to be together and would figure out how to make it work. Instead, she discovered that she had been living in a delusion for years while he had built a real life with someone else. "I ruined everything," she cried. "I ruined our marriage for a fantasy that was never real." I felt bad for her, but I also felt vindicated. I told her that this was exactly why I had filed for divorce. Her feelings for Marcus weren't just about unfinished business from the past, they were about her inability to fully commit to the present. Even if Marcus had been single and interested, what kind of marriage could we have had knowing that she would have left me for him in a heartbeat? Our divorce was finalized 2 months later. I moved into my own apartment, and Sarah kept the house. We agreed to split our shared assets equally, and since we both had good jobs, there was no alimony involved. I thought that would be the end of our story, but Sarah had one more bomb to drop. Update 1. It's been 3 months since my divorce was finalized, and I thought I was done dealing with Sarah's drama. I was wrong. Last week, she called me out of the blue, crying hysterically, and asked if she could come over to talk. I almost said no, but something in her voice made me think this was serious. When she showed up at my apartment, she looked terrible. She had lost weight, her hair was unwashed, and she looked like she hadn't been sleeping. She sat on my couch and just stared at me for a few minutes before she finally spoke. "I'm pregnant," she said quietly. My first thought was confusion about why she was telling me this. We had been divorced for 3 months and separated for much longer than that. Then the timeline hit me, and I realized she was talking about something that happened during our separation. "Is it Marcus's?" I asked. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "It happened during his visit. I thought if we slept together, it would help us reconnect. I thought it would make him realize what we could have together." I was stunned. "Sarah, he's married with a child. What did you think was going to happen?" "I thought he would leave his wife," she said, so quietly I could barely hear her. "I thought if he remembered how good we were together, he would realize he had made a mistake." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She had convinced a married man to cheat on his wife and gotten pregnant, thinking it would somehow win him back. It was the most delusional thing I had ever heard. "What did he say when you told him?" I asked. Sarah's face crumpled. "He hung up on me. I called him 3 times before he finally answered, and when I told him about the baby, he said it was my problem to deal with. He said he never should have come here, and that if I contacted him again, he would tell his wife everything and get a restraining order." So not only had Marcus rejected her fantasy reunion, but he had also made it clear that he wanted absolutely nothing to do with her or their child. Sarah had blown up 2 marriages, created a child that would grow up without a father, and was now completely alone. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I don't know what to do," she said. "I can't raise a baby by myself. I can't afford the house on just my salary. I've ruined everything, and I don't know how to fix it." I felt sorry for her situation, but I also felt angry that she thought this was somehow my problem to solve. Sarah, you made these choices. You chose to pursue a married man, you chose to sleep with him, and you chose to create this situation. I can't fix this for you. But we were married for 5 years, she said desperately. Doesn't that mean anything? Can't you help me figure this out? I told her that our marriage had meant everything to me, which was exactly why I had divorced her when I found out it meant nothing to her. I said that she had made it clear that I was never her first choice, and now that her first choice had rejected her, she couldn't come running back to me for support. She begged me to reconsider, saying she had learned her lesson and realized how good our marriage had been. She said she understood now that what she had with Marcus was just a fantasy, and that what we had built together was real and valuable. But that was exactly the problem. She only realized the value of our marriage after she had tried and failed to get something she thought was better. She only wanted me back because her first choice was no longer available. That wasn't love, that was settling for me all over again. I told her I hoped she figured out how to handle her situation, but that I wouldn't be part of the solution. Our divorce was final, our relationship was over, and she needed to face the consequences of her choices alone. After she left, I felt exhausted and sad. Not because I wanted to get back together with her, but because I realized how close I had come to spending my entire life with someone who saw me as a backup plan. If we had never gone to therapy, if she had never admitted the truth about her feelings, I might have lived my whole life not knowing that my wife was thinking about another man every single day. In a weird way, I'm grateful for that therapy session. Yes, it destroyed my marriage, but it saved me from a lifetime of being someone's second choice. Update 2. I'm writing this update because Sarah's situation has taken some turns that I think people following this story should know about. It's been 2 months since she told me about the pregnancy, and the fallout has been even more dramatic than I expected. First, Marcus's wife found out about the affair and the pregnancy. Apparently, Sarah had been calling and texting Marcus constantly despite his threats to get a restraining order. His wife saw the messages and confronted him about what had happened during his visit to Virginia. Marcus told his wife everything, including the fact that Sarah was pregnant and claiming the baby was his. His wife immediately contacted a lawyer and filed for divorce. She also called Sarah directly and told her that she would be seeking child support and would make sure everyone in Marcus's life knew what kind of person he was. But here's where it gets really messy. Marcus decided to fight the paternity claim. He hired a lawyer and demanded a DNA test, claiming that Sarah was lying about him being the father. He told his lawyer that while he had visited Sarah, nothing physical had happened between them, and that she was trying to destroy his marriage with false accusations. Sarah called me in a panic when she got the legal papers demanding the DNA test. She was terrified that Marcus was going to paint her as some kind of delusional stalker, which, honestly, wasn't far from the truth. She begged me to be a character witness for her, to testify that she wasn't the type of person who would lie about something like this. I told her absolutely not. I wasn't getting dragged into her legal drama with Marcus, especially when she had already proven that she was exactly the type of person who would do whatever it took to get what she wanted, regardless of who got hurt. The DNA test results came back 2 weeks ago, and Marcus is definitely the father. But instead of accepting responsibility, he's now claiming that Sarah trapped him. His lawyer is arguing that she deliberately got pregnant to try to break up his marriage, and they're fighting any kind of child support arrangement. Meanwhile, Sarah has been spiraling. She's had to put the house up for sale because she can't afford the mortgage on her own, especially with a baby coming. She's been calling me regularly, sometimes multiple times a day, asking for advice or just crying about how her life has fallen apart. Last week, she showed up at my apartment unannounced, 6 months pregnant and sobbing. She said she had been to see a lawyer about the custody situation with Marcus, and the lawyer had told her that even if they won child support, Marcus would likely get visitation rights. The idea of having to co-parent with someone who hated her and wanted nothing to do with her was overwhelming. I thought having his baby would make him realize he loved me, she said through her tears. I thought it would bring us back together. I asked her how she could have thought that getting pregnant by a married man would lead to anything good. She said she had convinced herself that his marriage wasn't real, that he had only married his wife because he couldn't find Sarah again after college. The level of delusion was staggering. She had built this entire fantasy where Marcus had been searching for her for years, where his marriage was just a placeholder until they could be reunited. She had never considered that he might actually love his wife, that he might be happy with the life he had built, or that sleeping with him would destroy multiple families. But the conversation took an even more disturbing turn when she started talking about me. She said she had been thinking about our marriage counseling sessions and realized that Dr. Martinez had been wrong to encourage her to be so honest about her feelings. I should have just kept those feelings to myself and focused on being a good wife to you, she said. If I had never told you about Marcus, we would still be married, and this baby could have been ours. I was horrified. Sarah, are you suggesting you should have lied to me for the rest of our marriage? I'm saying that some truths are better left unsaid, she replied. My feelings for Marcus were my problem to deal with, not something I should have burdened you with. But that wasn't the worst part. She then suggested that maybe it wasn't too late for us to work things out. She said that if we got remarried, we could raise Marcus's baby together, and I could be the father figure the child needed. You always wanted to be a dad, she said hopefully. This could be your chance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was suggesting that I should remarry her, help her raise another man's child, and pretend that none of this had ever happened. She genuinely seemed to think this was a reasonable solution to her problems. I told her she was out of her mind. I said that even if I could forgive everything that had happened between us, I would never raise the child she had conceived while trying to destroy another family. I said that baby deserved better than to be raised by people who saw it as a solution to their problems rather than a person in its own right. Sarah got angry then and accused me of being selfish and heartless. She said I was abandoning her when she needed me most, just like Marcus had. She said that if I really loved her, I would help her through this difficult time instead of judging her for her mistakes. I told her that love doesn't mean enabling someone's destructive behavior or cleaning up messes they created by hurting other people. I said that the most loving thing I could do was refuse to enable her delusions any further. She left angry, but she called me the next day to apologize. She said the pregnancy hormones were making her emotional and causing her to say things she didn't mean. But I think the pregnancy was just making it harder for her to hide who she really was. I've decided that I need to cut contact with Sarah completely. I changed my phone number and told her that any future communication needs to go through lawyers. I can't keep being her emotional support system while she deals with the consequences of choices that destroyed our marriage. I feel bad for the baby who's going to be born into this mess, but that's not my responsibility to fix. Sarah made her choices, and now she has to live with them. Update 3. This is probably going to be my final update unless something truly dramatic happens, but I wanted to let everyone know how this situation has concluded. It's been 4 months since my last update, and Sarah's baby was born 6 weeks ago. The birth itself was apparently very difficult. Sarah had no one with her at the hospital except her mother, who flew in from Florida. Marcus refused to be involved in any way, and Sarah's friends had largely distanced themselves from her after learning about the affair and pregnancy situation. Sarah named the baby Emma, and from what I've heard through mutual acquaintances, she's struggling with single motherhood. The house sold, but for less than she owed on the mortgage, so she's dealing with debt on top of everything else. She's living in a small apartment and trying to manage work and a newborn without any support system. Marcus's situation has also imploded completely. His wife went through with the divorce and got primary custody of their daughter. She moved across the country to be closer to her family, and Marcus is now paying child support for 2 children in 2 different states while trying to rebuild his life. The court ordered him to pay child support for Emma, but Sarah's lawyer told her not to expect much. Marcus lost his job when word of the affair got out to his co-workers, and he's working in a much lower paying position now. Between supporting his first daughter and paying his own legal fees, there's not much left for Sarah. But the most interesting development came 3 weeks ago when Sarah's mother called me. She apologized for bothering me and said she understood why I had divorced Sarah, but she was worried about her daughter's mental state. According to her mother, Sarah has been talking about reaching out to me again because she's convinced that seeing her with the baby will make me realize I want to be a family with them. Her mother was calling to warn me because she was afraid Sarah was planning to show up at my apartment or my workplace. I thanked her for the warning and told her that I had already made it clear to Sarah that I wanted no contact. Her mother sighed and said she had tried to talk sense into Sarah, but that her daughter seemed incapable of accepting that her actions had permanently destroyed certain relationships. She keeps saying that if people really loved her, they would forgive her and help her through this, her mother told me. She doesn't understand that love doesn't mean accepting being treated poorly. That conversation really drove home something I had been thinking about throughout this whole ordeal. Sarah's problem wasn't just that she was in love with someone else, it was that she fundamentally didn't understand what love actually means. She thought love meant other people accommodating her feelings and choices, regardless of how those choices affected them. She thought Marcus would leave his wife and child because he loved her. She thought I would take her back and raise another man's baby because I loved her. She thought her friends and family would support her affair and pregnancy because they loved her. She never considered that real love involves considering other people's feelings and making choices that don't cause harm. Sure enough, Sarah did try to contact me. She sent me a letter through my work address, along with pictures of the baby. In the letter, she wrote about how beautiful Emma was and how she reminded Sarah of the children we had talked about having together. She said that holding her daughter made her realize how much she wanted me to be part of their lives. The letter was full of the same delusional thinking that had gotten her into this situation in the first place. She wrote about how we could be a family, how Emma needed a father figure, and how this could be a fresh start for all of us. She even suggested that Marcus being out of the picture was actually a blessing because it meant there would be no complicated co-parenting situation. I didn't respond to the letter, but I did save it in case I need it for a restraining order later. I also spoke to my building's security about not allowing Sarah access to my apartment. The truth is, I feel sorry for Emma. She's an innocent child who's going to grow up with a mother who makes destructive choices and a father who wants nothing to do with her. But I can't save that little girl by destroying my own life, and that's essentially what Sarah is asking me to do. I've started dating someone new, actually. Her name is Jessica, and she's a teacher I met through a friend. She's kind, stable, and honest, and she makes me feel like I'm her first choice, not her backup plan. We've been taking things slowly, but I'm optimistic about the future in a way I haven't been in years. When I told Jessica about the whole situation with Sarah, she was shocked but supportive. She said she couldn't imagine being married to someone who was thinking about another person every day, and she understood why I had filed for divorce so quickly. Trust is like a foundation, she told me. Once it's cracked, you can try to patch it, but it's never going to be as strong as it was before. Sometimes it's better to tear the whole thing down and start fresh. That really resonated with me. I spent 5 years building what I thought was a solid marriage, only to discover that the foundation had been cracked from the very beginning. Sarah had never been fully committed to our relationship, and no amount of counseling or effort on my part could have fixed that fundamental problem. Looking back, I'm grateful that the truth came out when it did. Yes, it was painful to learn that my wife had been thinking about another man every day of our marriage. Yes, it was devastating to realize that she had settled for me because I was safe and stable rather than because she actually loved me. But discovering that truth at 34 gave me a chance to find something real with someone else. If Sarah had kept her feelings secret, I might have spent decades in a marriage where I was never truly wanted. I might have had children with someone who was always comparing me to someone else. I might have lived my entire life not knowing that my wife saw me as a consolation prize. Sarah's honesty in therapy destroyed our marriage, but it also set me free. She's now dealing with the consequences of chasing a fantasy while I'm building something real with someone who actually wants to be with me. I hope she eventually gets the help she needs and learns to make better choices for her daughter's sake. But that's not my responsibility anymore. I'm focused on my own future now, and for the first time in years, I'm excited about what that might look like. To anyone going through something similar, my advice is this: don't settle for being someone's backup plan. Don't stay with someone who makes you feel like you have to earn their love or compete with their memories. Life is too short to spend it with someone who sees you as their second choice. You deserve to be with someone who chooses you first, every single day. Don't accept anything less than that.